Hello, my name is Jordyn Bennett. This is case study number 1 for SPCE 638 at Ball State University in Applied Behavior Analysis. So these are the objectives. This is what we'll go over throughout the slides. So the client's name has actually been changed for the purpose of this assignment. So we'll call him Tommy for this assignment. Tommy is a 5-year-old boy that recently started attending a preschool for children diagnosed with autism. Tommy is nonverbal, and most of his communication involves grabbing a caretaker's hand and leading them to whatever he wants and needs. He has no previous exposure to alternative communication systems such as PECs or any AAC devices. So the operational definition of Tommy's problem behavior is eloping, which is defined as any instance in which Tommy exits the classroom without asking his therapist or teacher and with or without a demand in place. So the goal for him when he started was really to decrease his eloping and increase his functional communication so that we could try and get him to manned for it instead of just eloping for things that he wanted. So some examples of eloping for Tommy is running out of the room during any classroom instruction to escape a task, running out of the room during free time when there is no demand in place, leaving the room without asking permission from therapist or teacher to gain access to another room or activity. Some non-examples include leaving the room when there is permission from therapist or teacher, leaving the room when told to do so by therapist or teacher, so for bathroom breaks, when it's time to go home, leaving the room during recess when it's allowed, are some non-examples for eloping. So some of the possible maintaining contingencies is outlined in the BACB task list, the 5th edition. B4 is either positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement. So positive reinforcement because he is able to gain access to preferred items and activities when he engages in the behavior, such as tangibles and other toys, also gaining access to preferred snacks and food from the kitchen when he elopes. It could also be negative reinforcement to escape an aversive classroom task, escape therapist demands or loud classroom noises, or escape social interaction with peers. So those were the possible maintaining contingencies. Either he's gaining access to preferred items and activities, or he is trying to avoid or remove something aversive that's in the classroom. So the assessment that we did was an FBA or caregiver and therapist interview. So we determined that the possible functions were escape or access to tangible. So escape, he was doing it during group lesson when they were non-preferred tasks. But he was also always eloping to a specific room. And he in the past was allowed access to escape from tasks by his caregivers and his other therapist. So the other possible function was access to tangible. So he would elope to the sensory room when he has had little access to it throughout the day. He elopes in the morning usually when he has not had any access upon arrival. So when he gets there and he goes straight into the classroom and he has not had any access to the sensory room at the beginning of the day, he's more likely to elope throughout the day. He elopes approximately every 20 minutes from the classroom, and he's gaining access to those preferred items and activities when he does. So, and he was allowed access to those things by his caregivers and therapists in the past. So the conclusion is that the function of Tommy's behavior eloping has been identified as either escape or access to tangible. We think it's more access to tangible because he is more likely to escape or elope when he has had little to no access to the sensory room. So there doesn't have to be a specific antecedent or thing going on in the classroom that really triggers him to leave. Sometimes if he's been in the classroom for a long time, I guess that's when he tries to elope a lot more. So the intervention and the motivating operations, B12 in the BACB's task list. So again, he's more likely to elope when he's in a state of deprivation. So when he has not had access to the sensory room, it's an establishing operation for him to engage in the behavior that gains him access to the sensory room and those toys. So he's given access. Basically, we incorporated that into the intervention plan. So we wanted to create some states of satiation to kind of help decrease the eloping behavior. So Tommy is given access to the sensory room the first 15 minutes upon arrival before class starts, so we can kind of help build some satiation and decrease that eloping behavior. And we also incorporated some non-contingent reinforcement throughout the day. So he's given 5 minutes of sensory room break every 45 minutes, regardless of using his PECs, which is going to be my next part of the intervention. We also wanted to create states of satiation as kind of a antecedent strategy to decrease the eloping for this one. We planned to fade the non-contingent reinforcement over time so that we can help build his tolerance for waiting. So the intervention that we chose is PECS. The Picture Exchange Communication System is an intervention often implemented with nonverbal individuals diagnosed with autism. Research suggests that PECS can be effective intervention to increase social, language, and communication skills in children with autism and decrease problem behaviors. So the components of PECS, it actually has 6 phases. Tommy is currently in phase 2, so I'm not going to go over each phase in detail. But phase 1, we started with training the staff on how to implement the PECS system, and we would contrive some motivating operations. We would contrive motivating operations and use naturally occurring motivating operations to run opportunities with the PECs. So things that he was already playing with, we would present the PECs to him and prompt him to exchange the picture for the PECs, and then he would gain access back to that item. So again, he's in phase 2, which teaches the learner to travel to the therapist. So we have been able to increase the distance between the PECs board and the therapist. So he's able to go to the PECs board, grab the picture, and go to the therapist now. So he's pretty much mastered that phase. Phase 3 is discrimination. So that's when they learn to discriminate between different pictures, which Tommy is not completely there yet. Phase 4 teaches the client sentence structure. Phase 5 introduces attributes, and phase 6 teaches the client to respond to other comments and things like that. So Tommy, for schedules of reinforcement, B5 in the task list, he's currently on an FR1 schedule, so a fixed ratio 1 schedule, which means that every time he engages in the target response using his PECs, he is reinforced with that item or activity. Since he is newer to the center, we wanted to work on increasing his responding by keeping reinforcement super high and frequent. Eventually, the goal is to increase his tolerance for waiting and move from a fixed ratio or a continuous schedule of reinforcement to a more intermittent schedule of reinforcement. As he becomes more independent with that, we'll want to move from a thick continuous schedule to a thin, more intermittent schedule over time so that we can maintain that target behavior over time. So the modifications and outcomes, B11. So we modified the PECs because he was having at first a hard time focusing on the PECs board itself. So what we did was we took the actual PECs pictures and put them on items around the classroom and the school for things that he was motivated by. And things like that, and helped to promote generalization in different settings and with different people. So the outcomes of that, he's now began searching for his PECs when he's in a room where there is no pictures on the actual item or object itself. He's began waiting for permission to leave the room, so he's no longer eloping anymore. We also changed the non-contingent reinforcement. We took that out just because he is on a fixed ratio 1 schedule, so he's already frequently asking to leave using his PECs now. So we have taken the non-contingent reinforcement out because he's just never in the classroom. So we're trying to build up his tolerance again to be in the classroom. The maintenance outcome goal is to have Tommy independently using his PECs to communicate wants and needs across settings and with individuals, even when PECs are not on the actual object itself. So for generalization, these are actual pictures from my workplace. We put the PECs pictures on actual items to help promote generalization for different settings. We use multiple exemplar training for different PECs images, and each therapist and caregiver is trained on how to run PECs so that they can run these opportunities throughout the day. These are my references, and thank you for watching.